This lesson is about factoring trinomials, and all of the trinomials we're going to be doing today are going to have a coefficient with the x squared that is not 1. So you can see an example for number 1. We have 3x squared plus 8x plus 4. There are several ways to factor this type of problem. So I'm going to show you 2 of them, and I'm going to let you choose which one you want to do. If you know another one that you've done in the past and it also works, feel free to try that one. I don't really care which method that you use, just use whichever one is the best for you. So I'm going to show you 2 methods. The first method it is the longest one that I know of, but it is the one that's easiest to remember. And but it does take a little bit longer, so feel free to use this one if you want to. So the first method is that you can list all of the possible ways to factor this. So we know a few things. The first thing we know is that we know that our first term in each parenthesis needs to multiply to be 3x squared. The only possible ways to do that is to have a 3x and a 1x. The second thing that we know is that whatever numbers we have inside of these parentheses are going to multiply to be a positive. So the only ways that you can multiply to get a positive would be 2 positives or 2 negatives. And we know in this case it's going to only be 2 positives because the middle number is positive, so we know that's going to be the answer for that. So that's a good way to start. So we know we're going to have 2 positives. From there, you need to figure out how to get things that multiply to 4. And actually 4 has several ways to get to it. You can either do 1 times 4. You can also do 2 times 2. So I'm going to start by writing in the 1 times 4. Unfortunately, you also need to account for the 4 being with the 3x. Those would actually give you different answers. The final possibility is having your last 2 numbers as 2 and 2. So you would get 3x plus 2 times x plus 2. Luckily, since they're both 2, we don't have to change anything around, unlike in the previous one. So then from there, you are going to use the FOIL method for each one. And then whichever one you find out gives you the example you have up top when you use the FOIL is going to be your answer. So for example, for the first one, if you have 3x plus 1 times x plus 4, you end up getting 3x squared plus 12x plus 1x plus 4. We can already tell that the middle thing is going to be 13, so that first one is not going to work. You will do the same exact thing for the other 2. So then 3x plus 4 times x plus 1. When you work that one out, you get 3x squared plus 3x plus 4x plus 4. That one's a little bit better. It's closer. But we still know that the middle numbers give us 7x, which is not what we wanted. So let's try the last one and hope that one works. So that one we get 3x plus 2 times x plus 2. That's going to give us 3x squared plus 6x plus 2x plus 4. You'll notice that if you combine your like terms there, the 6x and the 2x, you do get an 8x, which is the middle number that we have up top. So we'll find that that one works. Now the second method, it's kind of fun. You might not remember it as well, but once you know it, it's really fast and it's really pretty fun. So I call it the slip and slide method. So the way that you would do this is you would start with your problem that you have here. and take the coefficient of the x squared, which is 3, multiply it by your last number, which is 4. When you do that, you would end up getting x squared plus 8x plus 12. Then you are going to factor out that particular problem. This one is much easier to do than the previous one because it's much shorter. So when you do that, you would get x plus 2 times x plus 6. If you want to go back and check, you'll see that that one works out. So unfortunately, we're not done. We have to take into account that we multiplied a number by 3. We do that by dividing our final number in these parentheses by 3. So I'm going to rewrite this as x plus 2/3 and x plus 6/3. So the x plus 2/3, there's an easier way to write that factor, and that would be to rewrite it as 3x plus 2. You would only just take that 3, move it in front of the x. X plus 6/3 is just the same thing as x plus 2. And just like magic, you ended up getting the exact same answer that you had from the previous method. It is your choice which of these you want to do, or if you have another method that works better for you. So here's 2 more examples to try. Now, these are slightly harder than number 1, but if you feel super confident with this, go ahead and try them on your own. If not, that's fine. I will walk you through them, and I'm going to show both methods for both problems. So for method 1, for number 2, you can start out by listing all of your possibilities. So the first thing to note is that all of your possible factoring forms can have a 2x and an x because you want the first term to become 2x squared, and the only thing you can get to become 2x squared is 2x times x. The second part of this is you need to get things that multiply to positive 3. So once again, to get a positive, you either have a positive and a positive or a negative and a negative. In this case, since our middle term is negative, we're actually going to have the 2 negatives. So I'm going to put in minus and minus. The next thing is we need to think about all things that can multiply to 3. And actually, there's only really 2 things that we can have to multiply to 3, and that's 3 and 1. So the only possibilities we're going to have are 3 and 1, written like this, or 3 and 1 written in the opposite direction, where the 2x has the 1 and the x has the 3. From there, you can check them using the FOIL method. The first one, you'll find that you end up getting negative 5x is your middle term, so it's not going to work out. The second one looks a little bit better. You end up getting negative 7x as your middle term, which is actually what you want. So our answer is 2x minus 1 times x minus 3. So now on to method 2, which I called the slip and slide method. You would start this problem by moving over the 2 with the 3. So you would multiply those together. And then you would get x squared minus 7x plus 6. From there, you would factor that out. So that would give us x minus 6 times x minus 1. Now, in order to account for the multiplying by 2, we have to get rid of that by dividing everything by 2. So the first thing is going to become x minus 3. Second thing, we get x minus 1/2, but I'm actually going to move that 2 in front of the x. That's going to be the same exact type of factor, just written in a nicer way, and this would be my answer. Same thing as I got before, just a different order. So the next problem is a bit more complicated, especially if you do it using the first method. So the way that you would start out is you need to figure out what you would have to multiply to get 3x squared. Luckily, the only thing that we have is 3x times x. The second thing to notice is that in order to get things to multiply to -5, we need a positive and a negative. Luckily, the only thing that actually is going to multiply to -5 is either -5 and 1 or +5 and -1. So what's going to happen is we're going to actually have 4 possibilities. So the first one is going to be with the -5 and the 1. The second one is also going to be with the -5 and the +1, but we're going to have them in a different location. Then we're going to use 2 more with the +5 and the -1. So from there, you can use the FOIL method on all of these to see which works out. And you will find that the one that works is this very last one that I have here. If you want, you can feel free to just do the FOIL method in your head, or you can work it all out on your own. Or if this method is too long for you and you want to try the other method, that is completely fine with me. So once again, this is my slip and slide method. With this one, you would start out by taking this 3 that's with the x squared, sliding it over next to the 5, and changing this entire expression to x squared plus 14x minus 15. Then we're going to factor that one that we have. When we factor that, we end up getting x plus 15 times x minus 1. The last thing that we need to do for this problem is to undo the multiplication that we did earlier. We undo that by dividing the 15 by 3 and by dividing the 1 by 3. So then for the x plus 15 over 3, 15 over 3 can just be simplified to +5. X minus 1/3 is just another way to write the factor 3x minus 1. You can just take this 3, move it in front of the x. You'll notice that my answer is exactly the same as using the other method. And once again, there are many different methods to do these problems with. Use the one that works best for you. So if you have a teacher in the past that taught you a different one, feel free to use that one, as long as it works for you for every problem. The last type of problem that we have in this section is when you have a coefficient of the x squared that has a negative. Luckily, this one has a coefficient of -1, which is not too bad. So what we can do is we can factor out a -1 and make this into a much nicer problem. So I'm going to pull out a -1. What happens when I do that is that everything inside is going to change signs. Suddenly everything is much, much easier. So then in the end, you still need to continue because inside of those parentheses, you have something that can be factored. So we're going to have -1 on the outside, and we're going to factor out what's inside the parentheses. So that's going to change to x plus 2 times x plus 1. You can write your final answer as that, or my preferred method would be just to write it without the 1. So you get -x plus 2 times x plus 1.